touching the lives of local people every day.
Hello, welcome back. This is Business Extra. Tonight we're talking about the big business talking point of the week, and that's the government's decision to reverse their initial plan to increase the tax that self-employed people would have to pay. That was, of course, announced in the budget just a few days ago. Quite a U-turn, but what does it mean for businesses and self-employed people all over Norfolk? My guest tonight in the studio is Clare Goodswen, a tax expert and partner at M&A Partners. We'll get her thoughts in just a moment, but first let's catch up on the week's business headlines. First, let's start with the latest unemployment figures, which are now at the lowest since the 1970s. In the east, the number of people unemployed fell by 9,138,000 people. The figures do say, though, there was a record number of people nationwide who have 0 hours contracts as their main source of employment. Now, it's one of the biggest retail units in the middle of Norwich, and we could be finding out by Easter who'll be moving into the old BHS store. The site on St Stephen's Street has been empty since August, when the famous chain closed its doors for good. 11,000 jobs went nationwide, but a deal to secure a new tenant could be done within weeks, according to a property agent, although we don't know yet who it'll be. This week, homeless people who've been camping outside the empty building were ordered to move on by its owners, Aviva. And the Norwich headquarters of Start Right Shoes is going to be getting a fresh look. The base at the Broadland Business Park is going to be turned into a state-of-the-art design facility to mark the company's 225th anniversary. It comes after their chief executive, Ian Watson, became the first boss to be appointed from outside the founding family last year. He wants to update the brand and move it into a new era. OK, let's get back now to the tax U-turn for self-employed workers. This was probably the big announcement in the budget just a few days ago. The idea from the Chancellor was to level the playing field and make the amounts paid by employed and self-employed people, they say, a little bit fairer. Didn't go down particularly well with some of the business community, as you'd expect, with some calling it a white van man tax, which I think with a name like that cannot really be classed as a vote winner. So what does it mean for the business world here in Norfolk? I'm joined, as I said, by Clare Goodswen from M&A Partners. Good evening, Clare.
Hello, Neil.
Now, the initial idea of this didn't go down particularly well. What kind of feedback did you get from people about the idea to, as they say, level the playing field?
I wasn't entirely surprised at the measure because it had been rumoured at the weekend. Personally, I think it was a very foolish and rash decision, but equally I think the Chancellor was quite naive in bringing it forward at this point in time.
But when it comes to the reaction that you were picking up from the self-employed community, you come into contact with an awful lot of people.
Absolutely.
How was it?
Yeah, I think everybody was very shocked, quite grumpy, because obviously there is a lot of feeling that actually when you're self-employed you are on your own, and increasing the burden of tax as they were doing or planning to do was a bit of a shock. Anything I think that upsets the entrepreneurial spirit of the UK in such challenging times for business it just can't be a good move.
Because if it had have gone through, how big an impact do you think it would have had on the self-employed community, from the builder,
Yes.
the plumber,
Yes.
whoever?
Well, for somebody earning about 20,000 a year with profits of about 20,000 a year, because of the abolition of Class 2 contributions, which used to be known as the stamp many years ago, they're being abolished in April next year. Somebody earning with profits of 20,000 would have broadly been left untouched. The higher you go up the earning scale, obviously the profits go up, the greater the impact. So for somebody with profits of perhaps 45,000 a year or slightly more, then they would have been £620 a year worse off. So £50 a month, which is a big sum of money.
Particularly if you're self-employed, I guess, because
Absolutely.
there is no safety net.
Absolutely, and of course with the self-employed person, they are taxed on the profits that they earn, which is different to those that carry out their business through a limited company. So when you have a good year, obviously you've got no control over the fact that you're going to pay more tax because you are assessed on the profits that you generate, and so clearly I think it was a retrograde move, and I think it was a very sensible thing at this juncture to step back from that decision. I think he was misled by the Treasury mandarins who suggested that it was a good idea to do this at this point.
So from the clients and people you work with, I'm not obviously not asking you to name names, but what kind of feedback were you getting from them? You say there were some grumpy people out there.
Absolutely. I think it's just a case of actually, is it fair that we pay more? Because actually self-employed people feel that they are treated very differently to an employed person. There's no safety net, there's no sick pay, there's no holiday pay, there's different parental benefits, there's different bereavement benefits. And I think the move to equalise the state pension 2 or 3 years ago to take away it, move to the flat rate pension, was the catalyst that gave the government the ability to announce the change that they did. But they didn't actually look at the situation in the round. So for people, somebody who's a hairdresser, actually to be faced with paying, well, actually I've done nothing different, but I've got to pay more tax, whereas my neighbour who's employed and has all of the safety net doesn't have to pay more. It just didn't feel very fair.
Because did you pick up, I know I did, on a bit of a them and us situation
Absolutely.
that started to appear? Some of the, I guess, the employed side of the fence were saying, well, there's people who take money in cash. There's things they don't declare. Yeah. Did you pick up on that as well?
I think that's a common misconception, and I think a lot of that has been led by the media. I think that there is a gap, there is a tax gap. We know that. The government have been doing some statistics on the black economy. I think it's getting harder and harder to under-declare earnings, and obviously the Making Tax Digital project that's coming up next year and the year after is part of the Revenue's attempt to cut down on somebody putting it in their pocket rather than declaring it. From our perspective, we just simply don't see that. It isn't worth the aggravation now with the Revenue. You just wouldn't even contemplate not declaring your earnings. So I think it's a bit of something that's been cultured and fostered by the media. And I personally, as an accountant, I don't see that side of it.
Now, the money is going to have to come from somewhere. This leaves something like a £2 billion gap in the finances, which is a pretty hefty gap. Should the business community be worried that maybe another section of business is going to be targeted when they come to find these taxes? Yeah,
I think, Neil, you're absolutely right. I think he's already announced, the Chancellor's already announced that the autumn budget will bring forward new tax changes, because obviously in fiscal neutrality you have to have the scales balancing. So if we know that there's a hole now, we know there's going to be tax rises in the autumn budget. What those tax rises are, I think there could be more tax levied on personal service companies, so those that work in the private sector, because we've got changes for contractors in the public sector coming in a couple of weeks' time. I think there could be changes to capital gains tax. There could be lots of changes around the edges that, of course, aren't caught by the manifesto pledge.
Because the self-employed tax, that would have hit Norfolk quite hard. There are an awful lot of self-employed people in this part of the country, farmers, for example, as one. If it was going for other areas of the tax system, would that hit us in this part of the country so badly?
I think we have, in Norfolk, we have got a very entrepreneurial county. I think, it's quite misunderstood how much business activity there is in Norfolk, and you obviously appreciate from your side what you see. I think that there is a real danger that actually the £2 billion has got to come from somewhere else, and there are some quite easy targets in the tax world where actually he could easily raise £2 billion. If he wanted to be fair to everybody, he could change pensions tax relief, and that would raise billions in one fell swoop.
Be quite unpopular.
Absolutely, but equally, ideologically, that's quite an interesting argument, because why should somebody who earns 40% get more tax relief on their pension than somebody who pays 20% tax? So that's quite an interesting thought. Personal service companies, we have lots of contractors in this area, because of course we've got lots of big businesses who bring in project managers just to carry out short-term projects, 6 months, 12 months, and then they go again. If their tax is raised, they think that could raise £500 million a year, which would neatly fill the tax gap created by the U-turn.
Well, a whole lot of gaps to fill there, and we will see. We'll look forward to the autumn budget.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
indeed,
Neil.
Claire. That's all we've got time for tonight, but do remember, drop us a line with your thoughts and your business stories too. You can find us on Twitter @MustardTV, and also get the latest news by subscribing to our new look YouTube channel, Norfolk Now. Business Extra back at the same time next week. Tomorrow night it's Sports Extra at the same time, with all the latest on who the next Norwich City manager may be. For now, thanks for watching and have a very good night.
touching the lives of local people every day.